Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're taking a closer look at Jean-Marie Le Pen,
All right.
the founder of France's National Front Party.
Yeah.
You sent over this CBS News piece on him.
Yes.
Really gets into his life, his legacy. And, well, I got to say, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, it really is.
I think, most people have heard the name.
Right.
But I think for this deep dive, it'd be interesting to uh, go a little deeper than just the headlines, explore the nuances of his career, the impact he had, especially, because he died recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to really grasp the significance of Jean-Marie Le Pen, we need to kind of rewind the clock a bit
Okay.
and go back to post-World War II France. So, imagine a nation grappling with the aftermath of war, decolonization, massive societal shifts. It was a period, really ripe with anxieties about national identity, economic instability, changing social norms. All of this kind of sets the stage for Le Pen's rise.
It's really interesting you say that, this idea of anxieties fueling his rise.
Yeah.
And the article mentions that, he was really good at tapping into people's fears.
Mm.
But I wonder if you could elaborate on what were some of those specific anxieties and how did he manage to, channel those so effectively?
Well, you have to think about the context, right? France was experiencing these waves of immigration,
Okay.
particularly from North Africa. And this fueled a lot of concerns, anxieties about cultural change, national identity.
Makes sense.
At the same time, economic anxieties were also rising because you had traditional industries in decline. You had globalization starting to, reshape the workforce.
Hmm.
So Le Pen, with his powerful rhetoric, he kind of provided a scapegoat for these anxieties,
Right.
Blaming immigrants, blaming the political establishment, and promising this return to a kind of romanticized past, a France that was strong, homogenous, protected from all these external threats.
Hmm.
And that message really resonated with a segment of the population, those who felt left behind,
Right.
disillusioned by the status quo.
So in 1972, with all this going on, this upheaval,
Yes.
he forms the National Front.
That's right.
And you mentioned earlier his combination of nationalism and economic populism.
Mm.
Can you break that down for me?
Just-
What exactly did that look like in practice?
Well, Le Pen, he understood the power of appealing to both economic and cultural anxieties. So, on the one hand, he championed these protectionist economic policies, promising to shield French jobs, French industries from foreign competition.
Okay.
And this resonated with, blue-collar workers,
Right.
people feeling the squeeze of globalization. But at the same time, he also promoted a strong nationalist agenda centered on traditional values, French identity, and this really hardline stance on immigration. He painted a picture of us versus them, where France's cultural integrity and economic prosperity were under threat from outsiders. So it's this potent blend of economic populism and cultural nationalism that formed the core of the National Front's platform. And it attracted this diverse coalition of supporters.
Now, of course, the article doesn't shy away from the controversies surrounding Le Pen.
Right.
His rhetoric often crossed the line,
Mm-hmm.
leading to accusations of racism, anti-Semitism. It feels like that was a key part of his persona, though, right?
Yeah.
This image of a defiant outsider.
Yes, absolutely.
But what I'm kind of struggling with is, how did this play into his broader political strategy?
Well, I think you're right that controversies were really central to his image and his impact.
Okay.
By pushing the boundaries of acceptable discourse, he got a lot of media attention, and he positioned himself as this fearless truth teller, someone willing to, challenge what he called political correctness,
Right.
which he believed was stifling debate on really crucial issues. So, for instance, his repeated attempts to minimize the horrors of the Holocaust. Now, while that was reprehensible,
Yes.
it allowed him to play the victim, claiming that, he was being silenced for speaking uncomfortable truths. So this strategy, however distasteful, it further cemented his image as this anti-establishment figure. And it really rallied his base.
And despite never actually winning the French presidency,
Yeah.
it's clear that he had a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
He shifted the political landscape.
He did.
And I'm particularly interested in his impact on, the mainstream political discourse.
Right?
The article mentions that he normalized far-right ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So how exactly did that happen? What are some concrete examples of that shift?
Well, think of it this way. He injected previously fringe ideas into the mainstream conversation.
Right.
So topics like immigration, national identity, cultural preservation, things that were once considered kind of taboo, they became these central talking points in French politics. And he forced mainstream parties to address these issues, often by adopting kind of watered-down versions of his own rhetoric. And that's really the normalization we're talking about.
I'll say.
A prime example is the mainstreaming of this term national preference, which is this concept heavily associated with the National Front,
Okay.
basically calling for prioritizing the needs of native French citizens over immigrants.
Right.
And that idea, once considered extreme, it's gained traction across the political spectrum.
And then, of course, there's the continuation of his legacy through his daughter, Marine Le Pen.
Yeah,
She took over party leadership,
that's right.
tried to rebrand it,
Yeah,
soften some of the rough edges of his rhetoric while keeping, that same core ideology.
right.
The name change to National Rally was that part of that effort.
It was definitely part of that effort to present a more moderate image.
Hmm.
But, it doesn't erase the underlying continuity in their approach. She, too, has capitalized on those same anxieties around immigration, globalization, Islam, and achieved significant electoral success, even making it to the final round of those recent presidential elections.
So it's clear that even in death, Le Pen's influence continues to ripple through French politics. And, we see it in the reactions to his passing. There's this stark division between those who mourned him and those who condemned his legacy.
Right.
He seems to remain a deeply polarizing figure.
Absolutely. And I think that polarization really speaks volumes about his lasting impact,
Right.
He tapped into these very real societal anxieties and, for better or worse, fundamentally reshaped the French political landscape.
Yeah, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. Le Pen's story, I think, is a powerful reminder of how seemingly fringe ideas, can gain traction in times of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And how those ideas can reshape the political landscape, even after the individual is gone.
Right. It makes you wonder, how will Le Pen's legacy continue to shape not only French politics, but the broader European landscape,
Yeah.
Particularly with this rise of right-wing populism we see across the continent.
It's a question.
It's definitely something worth reflecting on as we, move forward.
It really is. And it's clear that understanding Le Pen's rise and his legacy,
Yeah.
Is really essential for anyone who's trying to grasp the complexities of contemporary European politics. So if this deep dive has piqued your interest, I encourage you to explore this topic further. There's tons of information out there to dive into.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks for having me.
on this journey of discovery.